Part 1. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 1. Chapter 1 Chapter 001 Proposal. Auntie, I sincerely propose marriage for myself today, and I hope you will make it happen. Zhang Xiaoxi had a polite smile on his face. Zhang Maihui looked at the gold, red and green cash, and a gift list on the table with greedy eyes. What a time. Before Zhang Maihui started speaking, Zhang Xiaoxiao took over. Auntie, these are all my thoughts. The box on your left contains 999 pounds of gold, which means long and lasting. The one on the right, a box of colorful reds and greens, costs about 150,000 yuan in cash. The cash is a bit short, so I added some BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Rolls-Royce to the gift list. As soon as Zhang Xiao finished speaking, the door of the Ye family was violently opened. 6 bodyguards stood aside, and then a tall figure walked in. The man was wearing a navy blue suit. The suit was made of top-quality fabric and well-tailored. Every inch of it was. They all fit the man's figure perfectly. Sitting on the sofa, Zhang Xiao immediately shook his body and buried his head in his chest until the surrounding lights were replaced by shadows. Bohan's voice sounded in his ears, "Raise your head." A chill ran down Jiang's back, and his body trembled slightly. He raised his head tremblingly, and what came into view was Fu Chenxiao's gloomy face full of black air. The outline of his face was cold and sinister, and his thin lips were pursed. As straight as a sharp knife, he stared into her eyes, as cold as frost. Zhang Xiao called out tremblingly, "Uncle Wu." Fu Chen's slender hand pinched her neck with one hand and used so much force that the veins on his forehead were floating. Zhang Xiao felt it was difficult to breathe, his eyes were turning white, and his brain was deprived of oxygen. He made the smallest sound, "Uncle Wu," then his mind went blank. "Boss, if you don't let go, you will strangle me to death when I'm a child." Then Nangxuan rushed over in a hurry, clasping the man's fingers with all his strength, looking anxious to regain the man's sanity. The man narrowed his cold eyes slightly, and when he saw that the girl's face was flushed the color of pig's liver, he panicked and loosened his grip on the girl's neck. Cough, cough, cough. Zhang Shi coughed violently until tears came out of her eyes. Then she opened her eyes and looked at the surrounding environment. Then her brain hurt, and the memory of the original owner came with it. After she had just received the memory of the original owner, she still had not recovered. Coming over, a pair of fingers with elegant bones pinched her chin fiercely, with fierce red eyes and an extremely dangerous voice, "How dare you take my money to marry another man?" Zhang Xiao was still in a state of confusion, and a voice sounded in his head, "Congratulations on coming to the book, substitute wife, my husband is super fierce. Your current task is to survive 3 chapters. After Zhang Xiaoxiao heard what he said, he felt a lot of panic. As a female supporting character who could only survive 3 chapters in this book, now she just had to survive. How could she survive? Zhang Xiaoxiao, who had been a coward since he was a child, rolled his eyes and hugged her on the spot. Holding the hero's thigh, he looked pitiful, "Uncle Wu, do you believe that I have intermittent convulsions in my brain?" And Nangxuan laughed out loud on the spot, "When I was young, your attitude of admitting your mistakes made me sad. Uncle An, I'm dumbfounded." Zhang Xiao had no time to listen to his teasing. He stared at Fu Chenxiao unblinkingly, like a prisoner waiting for the verdict. He was nervous, scared, and all kinds of emotions were passing through him. Even the hands holding his trouser legs were wet. Well, this is a pet novel. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 2. Chapter 2002 will be harmonized. The man stared at her with his deep and cold eyes, his eagle-like eyes, as if he wanted to see through her soul. He put his long arms around the girl and sandwiched the girl between the moon in an extremely rough manner. He took a step with his long legs and walked out. "Go." When the 6 bodyguards saw that their master was about to leave, they immediately stepped forward to collect the things on the table. This collection of things irritated Zhang Maihuai's nerves, and she said in a sharp voice, "You are not allowed to touch my money." Her words made Fu Chenxiu, who was walking out, stop. He glanced at Zhang Maihuai with his sharp eyes, curled his lips and sneered, "Your money." When Zhang Maihuai heard the dangerously long and rising voice, her plump and fat body trembled instinctively. Not to mention that she didn't dare to look at Fu Chenxiu at all. Money is tempting, not to mention that what was on the table was Zhang Maihuai's whole life. With so much money that he had never seen before, Qian Zhuang was so daring that he was talking about the current Zhang Maihuai. "Yes, this is my money. Auntie Xiao agreed to your marriage to Nian Nian. Please take your household registration book." Zhang Xiao, who was hanging in the air, stiffened and his brain was almost congested. He shouted in his heart, "Auntie, please don't hurt me, Auntie, I still want to survive 3 chapters, but I don't feel that the aura on the boss's body has changed." Gu Jingting snorted coldly, without even moving a finger. The bodyguard directly pushed the middle-aged woman away, quickly packed the things on the table, followed Fu Chenxiu, and left Yes house, as if he had never come at all. "It's okay here." Zhang Xiao was roughly thrown into the car, and the boss with a cold breath was sitting next to her. However, she finally had time to let her think about the process. She became thirsty and drank water. Then she drank more vigorously, and suddenly, I felt that it was not difficult to breathe, and finally I could catch my breath smoothly, and I was already here. Holy shit, Zhang Xiao couldn't help but cursed. He might be the only one who choked himself to death when drinking water and wore a book. Wait and let her think about the content of the book. Stand-in wife, my husband is so fierce. This is a book in the top 10 of the serial novel list, and it is relatively popular. This book tells the story of the male protagonist who is a paranoid man. In an extreme mood, he gives up the white moonlight he has raised since he was a child. After killing him, the hero's mood became even more unstable and cruel. Until one day he saw the heroine, who had the shadow of white moonlight on her body. The hero began to act step by step, restrained his temper, and deceived the heroine. Later, the heroine discovered his paranoid violence and began to run away from him. The article was only updated to this point and has not been updated later. Zhang Xiaoxi only saw this. When I first read this book, it was because I saw the female protagonist with the same name as him in the first chapter. What Zhang Xiaoxiao didn't expect was that he actually became a person in this book. In the first chapter the content is that Bai Yueguang was dissatisfied with the male protagonist not allowing her to fall in love. She went to the house of her boyfriend with whom she was secretly dating, made a bold marriage proposal, and was caught by the male protagonist. The content of the second chapter is that the male protagonist directly harmonized Bai Yueguang and imprisoned her. The content of the third chapter is that Bai Yueguang stimulated the male protagonist with her words, and the male protagonist killed her when she acted too much. "I'll wipe it," Zhang Xiaoxi cursed in her heart. According to the development of the plot, she will be harmonized when she returns home. Her country has cultivated a good single young woman. Before she was choked to death, she was still a yellow flower girl. According to what she said later, from what I read, the male protagonist is extremely talented, otherwise Bai Yueguang would be killed by her. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 3. Chapter 3, Chapter 003. Do you like that man? The more she thought about it, the more she felt guilty. She even glanced at the male protagonist from the corner of her eye. As a urology intern, she looked at it and her face turned red unnaturally. Someone seemed to notice her looking at him, and a cold gaze fell on her. Zhang Xiao's face turned pale, his back was tense, and he lowered his head to reduce his sense of presence. He was still meat on the chopping board, so he might die accidentally. The car drove for a while and finally stopped. Unsurprisingly, she was still sandwiched between the moon and the moon by someone, hanging in the air, with a chill on her body, and strode towards her residence with long legs. Zhang Xiaoxiao raised his head slightly and saw a jaw-dropping villa that was as far as the eye could see. Based on a rough estimate, it covered at least 1,000 acres of land. This made her, who had just been an intern, born in the working class, unable to even afford the down payment for a house worth tens of thousands per square meter in Shanghai, to resent the world and lament the injustice of God. "Boss, you must calm down, she is still young." And Nangxuan looked worriedly at someone caught between the moon, and begged for someone's mercy despite the huge oppression. Fu Chenxiao stopped, faced an Nangxuan, sneered, and said in a mocking tone, "She is so young that she even goes to a man's house to propose marriage." And Nangxuan opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but was stopped in place by someone's eyes quenching the ice. "Boss, he is really angry, and the anger is not small. He said silently in his heart, 'Uncle and can't do anything if he doesn't help you.' Who asked you to pluck the hair from the tiger's head?" Zhang Xiao was squeezed into the big villa and went straight to the third floor. Someone violently threw her onto the bed. The man locked the room behind his back and then took off his coat. He walked toward her and unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of his shirt, revealing the unique male characteristic of Adam's apple. Zhang Xiao looked at the face of the character in front of him infatuatedly, and his heart beat faster. He was about to start harmonizing her, so why was he still vaguely looking forward to it? Fu Chen crossed his long legs and directly controlled her within his range of movement. He pinched her chin with one hand, his eyes fierce and cruel. "I like that man, huh?" Zhang Xiao's mind went blank. He nodded first, and then shook his head crazily. Fu Chenxiao's cold eyes were half squinted, the oppressive aura around him was raging crazily, and his voice was a few degrees colder than before. "Do you like it or don't you?" Jiang's jaw hurt when he was a child, and his IQ, which was attracted by beauty, returned to a large extent, and he answered out of survival instinct, "I don't like it." "You don't like it, and you dare to take my money to his house to propose marriage? I was too indulgent to you when you were young, wasn't it?" The man's eyes were burning with anger. Zhang Xiaoxiao is also convinced by this Miss Bai Yueguang. "Why do you want to go against the male protagonist? Don't be so rebellious." From the memories she received, the male protagonist loves Miss Bai Yueguang to the core, almost doting him since childhood. However, there are also things that cannot be violated, that is, he cannot fall in love. Now Bai Yueguang is fine. The young lady has violated the rules set by the male protagonist, so now she only has one move. "Fifth uncle, I was wrong. I will never dare to do it again." Zhang Xiaoxi looked at Fu Chenxiao pitifully with tears in his eyes. When he was a child, he did something wrong. He admitted his mistake for the first time, pretended to be pitiful, and finally acted coquettishly. This trick Zhang Xiaoxi used, it has been used repeatedly against my own mother, and it is absolutely successful. Now I can only wait and see whether it can successfully deal with the big boss. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 4. Chapter 4 Chapter 004 I was wrong. Fu Chenxiao raised his eyebrows slightly, and the sneer at the corner of his mouth deepened. The dangerous aura exuding from his body did not diminish at all. "You should tell me where you went wrong." Zhang Shi reacted very quickly and knew that his usual tricks were beginning to show signs of success. He quickly organized words in his mind and began to save himself from the situation that was about to be reconciled. "I made the mistake of taking your money and going to another man's house to propose." The man hummed softly, and his grip on her chin relaxed a little, and the oppressive aura also dissipated a lot. Just when Zhang Ziaxi was slightly relaxed, the man's cold, low, and somewhat dangerous voice sounded again. His deep and narrow eyes were half closed, staring at Zhang Xiaoxiao. Is that all? With their eyes facing each other, Zhang Shi tensed up his back nervously, cold sweat on his forehead broke out uncontrollably, and his brain began to get knotted. In the book, this boss is the kind of person who can decide your life or death with just one look. Now she is looking at him like this. She is considered awesome if she doesn't faint immediately. Not only can she not faint now, she also has to his quick thinking allowed the boss to spare his life. He continued stuttering, I shouldn't hide it from you, to fall in love. Fu Chenxiao's half-closed eyes were filled with anger. His eyes seemed to tear Zhang Ziaxi into pieces and swallow him, while his other hand roamed across his cheek. Zhang Xiao didn't dare to look at him, and turned her gaze aside, thinking that this boss was going to hit her. If the boss took care of himself, would he still be alive? It's over, I won't survive more than 3 chapters. Zhang Xiao bit his lip tightly and made a dead expression. Fu Chenxiao squinted at her expression, then released his hand holding her chin, stood up, and looked at Zhang Xiaoxiao condescendingly, Xiaoxiao, you don't have to go to school, I will invite a teacher to teach you at home. Zhang Shi. When I was young, my 5th uncle didn't want this to happen a second time, otherwise I don't know what he would do. After leaving these words, Fu Chenxiao left the room with an oppressive aura. As soon as Fu Chenxiao left, Zhang Xiaoxiao breathed a sigh of relief and slumped down on the bed. What she meant by surviving the disaster was what she just said. Without anyone else, Zhang Xiaoxiao began to sort out the memories he had received. Miss Bai Yueguang was brought home by Mr. Fu. She has no memory before the age of 8. When she first arrived at Fu's house, Xiao Nizai was a mistress who was not easy to mess with. She fought with Mr. Fu's grandson and defeated the only child at that time. Miao ended up in the hospital, then went to school and caused trouble in school. She was like a living ancestor. The old man was getting older and didn't have so much energy to take care of her, so he finally handed her over to his boss, who was Miao Miao's father. Miao Miao strangled Bai Yueguang when they met. Within a few days, Boss Fu sent Zhang Xiaoxiao back to the old man. The words he left behind were, if you don't want your only grandson to die early, I can continue to take care of the little ancestor. Because of Zhang Ziaxi, the old man's hair turned a lot gray because of worry, and he wanted someone to control Zhang Ziaxi. Just when he was worried, Zhang Xiaoxiao looked at Fu Chenxiao on the old man's family photo and said domineeringly, if he becomes my guardian, I will just be obedient. At that time, the old man called Fu Chenxiao back from Fanchange. The 18-year-old Fu Chenxiao had such a little thing added to his household registration book. It's time to open the window and Uncle An will bring you some delicious food. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 5. Chapter 5 Chapter 005 The Culprit. Zhang Shi's thoughts were interrupted. When he turned around, he saw An Nangxuan lying on the windowsill with a skewer in his hand. He was stunned for half a second, then stood up and opened the window. An Nangxuan came over from the windowsill and looked at Zhang Ziaxi with a smile on his face. The smile on his lips almost reached his ears. Not bad, Ziaxi is still alive. Zhang Xiaoxiao stared at him coldly, grinding his teeth and said, Uncle An, are you particularly unhappy that I was not dealt with by the 5th uncle? An Nangxuan had a completely flattering expression on his face, and put the skewer into Zhang Ziaxi's hand. Xiaoxiao, you have to understand Uncle An, you see you secretly have a boyfriend, Uncle An, I kept it a secret for you and didn't reveal anything. Zhang Xiaoxiao sneered, wishing to strangle An Nangxuan to death. He found out that Bai Yueguang was dating her boyfriend. At first, Bai Yueguang thought that she was finished. An Nangxuan would definitely tell Fu Chenxiao, but he didn't expect that An Nangxuan not only agreed to keep it a secret for him, but also said it was entirely his idea to help her and go to Ye's house to resolve this incident. He even boasted that he would protect him. If he knew that he didn't protect Bai Yueguang at all, would he regret it? With the initiator in front of him, Zhang Xiaoxiao had to help Bai Yueguang deal with the initiator. Then he looked at An Nangxuan with a different face, and called out very sweetly, "Uncle An." An Nangxuan suddenly felt his scalp numb, and a bad premonition arose spontaneously. When we are young, let's talk about it if we have anything to say. Uncle An really has his own difficulties. You know that your fifth uncle didn't speak to me at all just now. Next time, Uncle An will definitely find a way for you and your little boyfriend to sleep together, and I will bear the wrath of your fifth uncle. The smile on Zhang Xiaoxi's lips reached the bottom of his eyes, and he pointed the long stick in his hand at the tip of An Nangxuan's nose after finishing the skewer. "Uncle An, you tricked me once, you must give me some benefits." "Give it, I'll give it to you. Whatever you wanted when you were little, Uncle An will get it for you on a mountain of swords and a sea of fire." And Nangxuan carefully moved away the long sign that was pressed against the tip of his nose. "Then I want the lava from the volcano. Uncle An, please find a way to get it for me." Zhang Xiaoxiao chewed the brittle bone in his mouth and made a crunching sound, smiling brightly. And Nangxuan, "Uncle An, if you can't do it, then I have to tell my fifth uncle that you know that I'm dating Yannian. You also instigated me to go to Yannian's house to propose marriage. You didn't report the knowledge. You said that I would. How about I come and see you with the skewers like you are doing now?" Zhang Shi's white teeth glowed white under the light. And Nangxuan obeyed, and the skin all over his body immediately became tense. Fu Chenexio's love for Zhang Xiaoxi was not known to others, but they knew it very well. If Fu Chenexio really knew that he had not reported the knowledge and encouraged Xiaoxi, given how ruthless someone was, he would have to shed his skin even if he died. Thinking about it like this, and Nangxuan shuddered, and immediately started to play the emotional card. "When I was little, Uncle An was always kind to you, right?" Zhang Xiaoxiao replied from the memory he received. "So, Uncle An, I didn't report you just now, and you said just now that you have to compensate me even if you go to the mountains of swords and seas of fire." After saying that, Zhang Xiaoping smiled and put the finished long stick in An Nangxuan's hand, turned around, and went to the bathroom to take a shower. An Nangxuan looked at Zhang Xiaoxiao's back, his handsome face was slumped. It was true that he was not a member of the same family. This little ancestor was indeed raised by someone. This kind of character that always retaliates is simply not too similar. Woohoo, he is going there to bring lava to the little ancestor. Fifth Master, that boy is clamoring to see the lady. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 6. Chapter 6 Chapter 006 Death in 5 minutes. In the dark night, the man's body stood upright, his head slightly lowered, his eyes stayed on the tall figure, quietly waiting for his answer. About 10 minutes after he came here, when the man was about to ask again, a sneer sounded in the silent study, "Let him see you." A surprised expression appeared on the man's face, but only for a moment. "Then I will bring him here tomorrow." "Bring it immediately." The man was stunned for a moment, then stepped back to arrange the matter. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the sound of leather shoes on the floor outside the corridor came from far too near, and then there was a click, and a tall man appeared beside Zhang Xiaoxi's bed. Zhang Xi had already woken up when he heard the click of the door. He looked at the shadow hanging over him with sleepy eyes, and suddenly woke up. All sleepy heads ran away in an instant, and his mind went into high alert. He changed his voice obediently, "Five uncle." Fu Chenexio's deep and sharp black eyes swept across her cheeks, and his eyes stayed on her collarbone. His eyes changed slightly, and his brows twisted slightly. Jiang Shi's scalp was numb when he was staring at him. He looked down at his gaze and saw a touch of light pink on his fair face. He quickly arranged his clothes with his hands. While arranging his clothes, he started to do various things. Guess what the boss is here for now? Isn't it to complete the unfinished business? Could it be that she still can't escape the fate of being harmonized and being a end partner who is destined to die? Who will save her now? The expressions on Zhang Xiaxi's face changed a lot. Fu Chen's long eyebrows on his temples were tightened and his eyelids were half closed, making it difficult to see what he was thinking. Xiao Xiao, change your clothes and come downstairs. Someone wants to see you. Huh? Zhang Xiao looked at the man who had walked to the door in confusion after speaking. Zhang Xiao went downstairs with doubts. The living room was brightly lit. Fu Chenxi was sitting lazily on the sofa with his legs crossed. There were more than a dozen tall and strong bodyguards standing next to him. There was another person sitting on the other sofa. However, he was blocked by the bodyguards and Zhang Xiao couldn't see his appearance clearly. Zhang Xiao walked up to Fu Chenxi in a daze, lowering his head and said, "Uncle Wu. When I was young, I finally saw you. Don't be afraid that I will take you away now." Zhang was hugged when he was young. Before he could react, the young man's voice rang in his ears again. "You don't have to bring anything when you are young. When we are old enough, we will get married." Zhang Shi. "Miss, this is the household registration book." The old housekeeper took the household registration book and placed it in front of Zhang Xiaxi. Zhang Xiao looked at the brown shell of the household registration book. She would be an idiot if she couldn't react now. Just when she was about to refuse, her body went to get the household registration book uncontrollably. Just when her hands touched the household registration book, the air in the entire hall suddenly dropped, and the air pressure was so low that it made people breathless. The dozen or so bodyguards all stood straight and silent. Zhang Xiaxi glanced at the man sitting on the sofa with an expressionless face from the corner of his eye. Although his face was expressionless, Zhang Xiaxi could feel the danger. She was almost crying, and her hands were moving uncontrollably. "Take the household registration book. When the household registration book is completely in your hands, the system's voice appears perfectly. The host will die in 5 minutes. After death, you will stay in the void space forever." "What does it mean to stay in the void space?" Zhang Xiao gritted his teeth and communicated with the system. "The void space is equivalent to your human galaxy. You can neither return to reality nor continue in the book and become cosmic garbage," the system answered mechanically. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 7. Chapter 7 Chapter 007 I'm still young and don't want to get married. Zhang Xiaxi really went berserk and yelled at the system, "You piece of shit, who asked you to bring me here? You are responsible for bringing me here. Didn't you see that I can't control my hands? System, you will die in 3 minutes." Damn, Zhang Xiaxi really wanted to kill that garbage system, but unfortunately now was not a good time to fight with the garbage system, because the boss had already stood up and started walking towards him. Sweat on Zhang Xiaxi's forehead continued to flow along the contours of her face. She tried desperately to control her hands and hand the household registration to the boss. She didn't want to take the household registration book. This hand was ready to hand the household registration book to the young man behind him. Seeing the big boss approaching him step by step with a fierce aura, Zhang Xiao felt that death was getting closer to him. System, you have 2 minutes to die. Zhang Shi. Now I have something to say. MMP. Xiao Shi, you are really naughty. Fu Chenxi held a white handkerchief in his hand and wiped the cold sweat from Zhang Shi's cheeks with extremely gentle movements, slightly lowering his bottomless eyebrows. Zhang Xiao. What to do if you are afraid? At this moment, when he was almost dead, Yannian spoke, "Uncle Fu, I will take good care of you, you have to trust me." After Yannian finished speaking, Zhang Xiao wanted to die on the spot. "Brother, if you can't speak, don't speak. Don't take me with you if you want to die. I don't want to be the garbage of the universe, I want to live. Everyone standing around took a breath of cold air without exception and silently mourned for the young man in their hearts. Only the old housekeeper kept looking at the door anxiously. Fujinexiu chuckled lowly and raised his eyelids. There was a hint of murderous intent in his black eyes, and the sudden rise in his aura was cold. You take care of her, he said mockingly. The young man is young and energetic, and he can hear the sarcasm in it. Uncle Fu, although I don't have the ability now, it doesn't mean I won't have the ability in the future. I will give you better conditions than now when I was young. Zhang Xiao really wants to cry. Boy, do you know the current assets of this big boss? Please check it before you make big claims. Fu Jianxiu ignored the boy at all and wiped Zhang Xiaoxi's sweat more carefully, from his cheeks to his neck. System, you will die in 1 minute. Xiaoxi, Uncle Wu has never thought that your neck is so thin. Fu Jianxiu's well-jointed fingers just stuck in Zhang Xi's throat through the handkerchief. Zhang Xiaoxi could feel the strength of his fingers beginning to slowly gather, and he was still trying to control his hands. As the air became thinner and thinner, huge fear enveloped Zhang Xiaoxi. The old housekeeper looked toward the door anxiously, lowered his voice and asked the man next to him, "Have you informed Mr. Fu yet?" "I'll let you know when I'm out." The man nervously looked at his master. Zhang Xi felt that his brain was about to run out of oxygen. He was really going to become a ghost this time. He thought about the fact that her parents were the only daughter in the real world, and they had worked so hard to pay for her college education. She had not yet thought about her happiness. I was inexplicably brought to the book. Thinking of Zhang Xi, tears slowly slid down the corners of his eyes. The tears fell on Fu Jianxiu's hands, with warm tears, like fire, burning his skin. Pinching Zhang Xi's hand loosened slightly. Zhang Xiao felt that he could breathe, and somehow he could control his hands on his own. He quickly stuffed the household registration book in his hand into Fu Jianxiu's arms, with a pale face but a smile on his face. "Fifth uncle, I'm still young and I can't get married, the household registration book is not needed." End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 8. Chapter 8 Chapter 008 Are you sad? Then Zhang Xiaoxi tried his best to break away from Yannian's embrace, leaned towards Fu Jianxiu, and said to Yannian with a serious face, "Classmate, yeah, I promised my fifth uncle not to fall in love, so our relationship ends here. I give it to you, my fifth uncle will try his best to satisfy you for the damage caused." "Is it the fifth uncle?" Zhang Xiaoxiao stared at Fu Jianxiu with his dark brown eyes, and the smile on his face was as far-fetched as possible. Fu Jianxiu's dark eyes flashed with a soft light. There was no doubt that all Zhang Xiaoxiao's actions just now satisfied him. He nodded slightly, which was considered an answer to her. When Zhang Xiaoxiao saw him nodding, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Just now, he almost lost his life. Isn't this big boss's possession of Baiyu Eguang too strong? If he doesn't get it, he will destroy it. Mom, she felt terrible just thinking about it. It seemed that if she wanted to survive in this book in the future, she would have to keep a distance from men. "Xiao Xiao, you want to break up with me?" Yannian's eyes widened and he looked at Zhang Xiao with a hurt expression. Zhang Xi's heart throbbed as he looked at the young man in front of him. He had to say that Miss Baiyu Eguang had excellent eyesight. The young man was handsome, with sharp eyebrows and a high nose. The most beautiful thing was his pair of peach blossom eyes with water mist, which happened to be in use now. She couldn't bear to look at herself with that injured expression, but the occasional pain in her neck warned her that now was not the time to sympathize with others, so she answered the boy without any tact, "That's right." When Yannian heard the answer, a big teardrop fell down from his misty peach blossom eyes, and his voice was hoarse and a little crying. "Child, do you really not want me? Oh my God, Zhang Xiao's heart felt like it was about to break following the young man's voice that sounded desperate and abandoned. His instinct was to comfort this young man who had been invisibly hurt by her, and he was just about to step out. Fu Chenxiao called her softly, "Our." Then a wave of low pressure instantly enveloped her, and Zhang Xiaoxi froze in place, thinking that it would be better to send this young man away as soon as possible. It would be no good for anyone to hold him back any longer, so he had to be determined. Words: "Yes, I don't want you anymore. When I chased you, I just made a bet with my best friend. Now that the bet has come, I naturally have to draw a clear line with you. And I went to your house, and you are as greedy as your mother. I really can't like you, so go away. My fifth uncle has just promised to compensate you for the harm I've caused you. Just disappear before my eyes. I don't believe it. When I was young, I didn't believe that you chased me just for a bet. You have obviously done so many romantic things with me. It doesn't matter if you don't like my mother. We won't live with her in the future. I won't have you when I was young. I will die." Yan roared heartbreakingly, his peach blossom eyes filled with bloodshot eyes. Zhang Xiaoxiao suddenly felt a headache. Why is this child so stubborn? She is so handsome. There will be a lot of girls chasing her in the future. Why hang her on a tree with a crooked neck? He tugged Fu Chenxiao's sleeve with his hand. Uncle 5. Fu Chenxiao glanced at her coldly, and with a wave of his hand, the dozen or so bodyguards standing nearby easily took the nearly 1.8-meter-old boy out. The boy did not resist when he went out, but just looked at her coldly with those peach blossom eyes. Holding her. Are you sad? Fu Chenxiao's emotionless voice suddenly sounded in the hall. Zhang Xiao was stunned for a moment, then put his lips that were a little dry, and looked directly at Fu Chenxiao with his black and white eyes. Fifth uncle, why should I be sad? Fu Chenxiao stared into her eyes, lightly touched her cheek with his cool fingertips, and said in a calm voice, if you're not sad, why are you crying? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 9. Chapter 9 Chapter 009 She is too difficult. Zhang Xiaoxiao's heart sank following his words. Did he shed tears? Why didn't she feel anything? It couldn't be that Bai Yueguang hadn't left yet. This body was not under her control at all. You garbage system, please come out and let's talk. Are you trying to trick me? Zhang Xiaoxiao shouted in his heart. System, the owner of the body has passed away. Don't worry. The reason why you cry is because you have not fully integrated with this body. Zhang is about to go berserk when he is young. He has not fully integrated yet. Damn it, doesn't he know that he is about to finish playing now? It is because of this broken body that I shed tears. System, I don't feel you are in any danger. Zhangxi. It doesn't matter, as long as you behave well from now on, Fu Chenxiao said. Zhangxi. When I was young, my dear granddaughter, I heard that your fifth uncle wanted to deal with you. Grandpa, I was worried all the way. Don't be afraid that Grandpa will come to support you. Zhang Xiaoxiao followed the loud voice and looked over. A well-dressed old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion walked towards her quickly and protected her behind him. Then he heard a strong scolding voice. Lao Wu, didn't you just have a boyfriend when you were young? Don't say that she went to someone else's house to propose marriage. Even if she was to get married, the old man would prepare a generous dowry for her. You, an old bachelor who is almost 30 years old, still want to let Xiao be the same as you. Go and meet the daughter of the Chen family tomorrow. After the old man scolded him, he turned to face Zhang Xiaoxi, who looked completely different. He had kind eyes, and said, Xiao Xiao, Grandpa agrees with you to talk about a partner. The young man is good looking. Please bring him to grandpa to see you sometime. Jiangxi. The old man thought she was still afraid of Fujinexiu, so he comforted her softly, when you were young, grandpa was here to support you. Don't be afraid. Your fifth uncle wouldn't dare to do it when grandpa is around. Zhang Xiaoxiao looked at Fujinexiu's deep eyes, his long eyelashes trembled, and he immediately lowered his head. Grandpa, I'm just joking, and I'm still studying and don't want to fall in love early. Mr. Fu understood Zhang Xiaoxi's reaction as the young couple being beaten with sticks. He turned around and glared at Fujinexiu. Lao Wu, did you break them up? Fujinexiu faced the old man expressionlessly. Dad, if you are too idle, I can find you a wife. But you are still too idle. I heard that boy Fuyan also has a girlfriend. You can get him married, but ours are still small. Fuyan is as old as he was when he was little, so why should he be so small? Mr. Fu's face turned red with anger at Fujinexiu's words. Fujinexiu frowned slightly and looked at the old man calmly. As long as I don't agree, I will never get married in my life. Dad, you'd better go back and rest early. You. The old man pointed at Fujinexiu, breathing heavily. The old housekeeper hurriedly stepped forward to support him. Old man, I will take you back. I'm not going back. I'll stay here today. Arrange a room for me. The old man was helped by the housekeeper to sit down. Zhang Xiao stood aside without even daring to take a breath, silently mourning for Bai Yueguang in his heart. It was really a bit creepy to be liked by such a man. Go up and have a rest. When I'm young, stay with grandpa. They both spoke at the same time. Zhang Xiaoxiao could only stand there frozen, not knowing who to listen to. It should be said that she couldn't afford to offend both of them. It was too difficult. End of this chapter. After wearing the book, I became the group favorite. Author, Little Ginger. Chapter 10. Chapter 10 The Exaggerated Child. Child, you haven't seen grandpa for a long time, so don't you listen to grandpa, don't you feel sorry for grandpa. The old man began to cry. Zhang was very filial when she was young. It was really heartbreaking to see her look like this. In addition, she had the memory of Bai Yueguang. She knew that the old man was not good to Bai Yueguang. Bai Yueguang was also very good to the old man. She ignored Fujinexiu and ran away. Go to coax the old man. Grandpa, why don't I listen to you? You have loved me so much since I was a child, so of course I will stay with you. Then he whispered in the old man's ear, Grandpa, you also know that Uncle Wu has how cruel. I'm afraid the house rules I copied since I was a child can't be sold for more than 20 yuan. Don't worry, he won't dare to do anything to you as long as Grandpa is here. Grandpa is here to support you today. Don't be afraid. The old man comforted her in a comfortable mood. Fujinexiu glanced lightly at his grandfather and grandson who were biting their ears, and frowned slightly. When I was young, I sent grandpa back to his room and came to my study. Jiangxi. Zhang Xiao spent a lot of time coaxing the old man to get better. He walked to the study at a snail's pace, stood at the door and knocked on the door. Uncle Wu. Fujinexiu leaned lazily on the boss's chair, clasped his hands on his thighs, and stared at her indifferently with his black eyes. Child, do you know why I asked you to come? Zhang Xiao shook his head in confusion. It seems that I forgot. Jiangxi. Get your things ready and come to my room later, or see how I deal with you. Jiang's confused state suddenly became clear. I dared him to hear the few words she mentioned in front of the old man. Every time this Miss Bai Yueguang made a mistake, the male protagonist would deal with it. How to deal with it specifically, such as punishing him with copying. The rules of the Fu family, such as being beaten by herself, or helping the boss wash clothes. If he heard the whisper just now, she has already been punished, so what should she choose? Choose to be beaten, or choose to copy the family rules? The rules of the Fu family are, it was a very thick book. Could you negotiate the price? So she did so, Uncle Wu, It seems you want to choose to be beaten. Just 2 words made Zhang Xiaoxiao hold back what he wanted to say. Damn, this male protagonist is simply a pervert. Miss Bai Yueguang is already a senior in high school and is no longer a junior, so why should she copy the family rules? With a lot of resentment, Zhang Xiao left the study angrily without even saying hello. Zhang Xiao returned to her room and glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, so she didn't have to sleep anymore. She sat at her homework desk, took out a piece of fora paper from the drawer, and then took out a pen from the pen holder. Prepare to copy the family rules. Thinking of her as a person who has only written acceptance speeches since she was a child who has always been praised by her teacher, and now she starts to copy the house rules here, she is simply doing so badly. Zhang Xiaoxiao picked up his pen and started copying the family rules. He couldn't hold back the corner of his eye from twitching from the first article he copied. The house rules were tailor-made for Miss Bai Yueguang. Just like one of the girls of the Fu family are not allowed to stay out at night. If they don't stay up at night, they will be punished by going to the ancestral home of the Fu family to learn the rules. What are the rules of the Fu family? In ancient times, the ladies of the house would eat and sleep without speaking, and they would smile without showing their teeth. They almost didn't write down the rules of obeying their husbands when they get married. The more Zhang Xiaoxi copied the house rules, the more her eyes twitched, thinking that she had discovered a lot of house rules, and they seemed to have been added later. The next day Zhang Xiao went to the next room with the copied house rules. At noon, Fu Chenxiao usually went to work and was away. Zhang Xiaoxiao wanted to take this opportunity to put down the scrawled family rules and leave. End of this chapter.